believe I've met most of you, but for those of you that don't know me, my name is Michelle Dumler, and I'm new to Pitch Your Peers this year. And I'm honored to be here among all of the amazing women and the amazing organizations we've heard from tonight. And I'm excited to share Stolen Youth with you. I first came to learn about Stolen Youth about 4 years ago when I attended the annual luncheon. I was invited by a friend that was on the board. And to me at the time, sex trafficking was not something I really thought about. It wasn't prevalent in my life. I didn't have any personal connection to it. And it was something I thought that happened on the other side of the world in developing countries. And I thought little about the issue in the US, let alone the streets of Seattle. And having lived here my whole life, I went to college here, I've worked here, I've raised my kids here, I was completely oblivious to this industry that is developing right here in our backyard. I saw this video at that first luncheon I attended, and I was horrified, as I'm sure many of you are. How could 500 children be sexually exploited in the city of Seattle? And that's every day, multiple times a day. It sounds unbelievable. I heard from one King County sheriff who rescued a 12-year-old that had been raped 78 times in 1 week. As a mother of 3 and as a human being, this sickened me. My youngest son was in elementary school at the time, and I thought that's like every single one of these kids being sexually exploited. And I wanted to learn more and understand this problem. I learned that sex trafficking is a $42 billion industry, and the US is the number 1 consumer of sex worldwide. So we actually drive this demand. I learned that sex trafficking is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world, and is second only to drug trafficking in terms of size of business. I also learned to my surprise that Washington State is ranked 12th in the country, and the number of reported cases has doubled from 2012 to 2017. So we know this is a global problem and a national problem, so I started paying attention to the headlines in King County. And I learned that sex trafficking of youth is a $120 million business in Seattle. I learned that buying sex online with kids is as easy as ordering a pizza, and that the most common time of day to buy sex online with children is 2 p.m. on a work day. I read about a 2015 sting operation that took place in Seattle where a 15-year-old girl was posed for sale, and they received 250 interested buyers in 2 hours. And this resulted in the arrest of 18 individuals, several of whom were Microsoft and Amazon employees. And at this point, I learned that the average sex buyer in King County is a white male, just under the age of 50, highly educated, and a white-collar professional. And I continue to hear more stories of survivors and their struggle to return to a normal life, because for these kids, their lives don't end. They have to go on and learn how to survive with this trauma. And you think to yourself, how can this be? I can see how maybe in a developing world where families are in dire need of money and families can be coerced into selling their children. How does this happen in King County?
As well-versed as most of us may be about our money and the nation's financial systems, there exists a dark, thriving underground economy that the vast majority of Americans know next to nothing about. The selling of children for sex is a business. It's called child sex trafficking, and it generates roughly $120 million a year in Seattle alone. We're talking about an economy that carries a monumental cost, a human cost. And this is how child sex traffickers do business. It's all about supply and demand. First, the trafficker, most often male, looks for someone to sell, typically targeting those most vulnerable, those easiest to manage and manipulate, children. He'll likely begin his search on social media platforms where conversations are anonymous, widespread, and easy to start. He'll then single out and attempt to engage girls and boys, teens and preteens with whom he can find an in, a topic over which he and the child can bond. And from that bond, the young person's trust is born and the relationship begins. The typical child sex trafficker might initiate a conversation by promising a kid a job, drugs, or alcohol. Or he may offer protection from a dangerous situation at home. But as he gains control, psychological control over the child, the trafficker's sway becomes greater and more menacing. He may even resort to the making of violent threats to force the victim to remain engaged. And as he pulls the youngster closer to him and a sense of dependency is formed, that child slowly becomes more isolated from family and friends. And this is the point at which the trafficker puts him or her up for sale. Sadly, surprisingly, the demand is there, and the internet makes transacting easy. Through what is considered a pretty seamless and sophisticated system, the child sex trafficker uses a variety of websites to connect with buyers. And who are these buyers? They're people you may not suspect. Teachers, pastors, police officers, and judges, the guy next door. And despite their different professions and backgrounds, these criminals share two things in common. They're male and they're abusers. Adults consciously choosing to purchase children for sex. In the end, the trafficker gets the money, the buyer gets his sex, and the child, the victim, is exploited and sold and sold and sold again. These boys and girls are minors. Legally, they cannot consent to a sexual experience. This is sexual exploitation. This is trafficking. This is the human rights issue of our time.
One of the luncheons I attended, and a little bit before that I was able to meet this girl you see here, her name's JS, and I was completely moved by her, and it's almost shocking to see her because she looks like any high school student we would see walking around any one of our communities, and she was introduced by her 17-year-old brother. And I learned that she's a 15-year-old high school student at Federal Way, and she was a top student, played soccer, she was a violinist, and came from what we would consider a close, normal, intact family. And after a fight with her family, she left and had kind of moved in with a man that she had previously met, and who preyed on her vulnerability. And he posed as her boyfriend and started a relationship with her, and she soon found herself manipulated and trapped and was sold for sex for 108 days before being rescued. And what was kind of shocking is you look at her and it just made me realize that we may not be the typical victims, but no one is immune to this problem. Early on, I had the opportunity to meet Patty Fleischman, who's actually the founder of Stolen Youth, and she and a group of women had read the book Sold, which many of you have probably read. It's the story of a girl from Nepal who's sold into the brothels of India. And Patty and this group of women had resources and were so moved by this book that they wanted to go to India and understand this problem and see it firsthand. And they went into the sex brothels. They saw the boys and girls that were being exploited. They met with organizations that were working to rescue these children one at a time. And they came back to Seattle completely inspired and motivated and wanting to attack this problem that they knew existed here. So Patty and this group of women created Stolen Youth with the vision to end child sex trafficking in King County, and a mission to attack this problem from every angle: prevent, recover, restore. Prevent child sex trafficking before it happens and disrupt the marketplace. Recover victims and refer them to critical services. And restore victims so they can lead positive and productive lives and go on to be successful and independent individuals. Patty knew that to make this vision a reality, Stolen Youth could not do this alone. She had to work collectively across key nonprofit organizations in Seattle to attack this problem from every angle. These five nonprofit partners form what is now called the Stolen Youth Coalition, and they include the Center for Children and Youth Justice, the Business for Ending Slavery and Trafficking, Seattle Against Slavery, Youth Care, and the Organization for Prostitution Survivors. By managing these efforts across these organizations, Stolen Youth ensures that these programs to end child sex trafficking are efficiently funded, strategically managed, and professionally operated. Each of these nonprofits in their entirety does a multitude of things, with only a couple programs focused on youth victims. By creating the Stolen Youth Coalition, we oversee the relevant youth programs from each partner, and in doing so, Stolen Youth has built the first of its kind, structured 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week response program to disrupt the marketplace, provide immediate assistance, and refer victims to critical services and ongoing recovery. By managing and funding these programs, Stolen Youth has created the only organization in the United States focused specifically on the sex trafficking of youth. And you saw the size of this problem. Stolen Youth is the only organization focused on youth victims. As you can see by this breakout, in 2018, we received roughly $1.4 million, mostly through our annual luncheon. And through funding our partners, we built and expanded each of these programs you can see listed here. In addition, through priority funding, we're able to address the rapid changes in the child sex trafficking industry and put money where it's needed most. With the arrest and shutdown of Backpage, which is an online black market buying and selling platform, the issue has moved from the desktop to the sidewalk, and we've been able to pivot and provide resources where they're needed most. Now, with politicians discussing the decriminalization of adult sex workers, the focus has shifted to adult prostitution, but we remain empowered to ensure that focus and funding stays on youth victims. It's ever-changing and constantly evolving. We can't arrest our way out of this problem. There simply aren't enough resources. If it's not us, it's no one. The coalition model works, we know it works, and has become a national model for how to effectively address the growing problem of child sex trafficking in cities around the country. In 7 years, Stolen Youth has raised just over $7 million to combat child sex trafficking in King County and has provided the following. We've connected 600 youth victims to vital services, including safe housing, trauma counseling, drug counseling, vocational training, education, and life skill programs. We've trained 2,000 medical personnel and healthcare professionals on the signs of trafficking, how to spot it, report it, and the local resources available for victims. We've disrupted 22,000 attempts to buy sex online with children through decoy chatbots and Facebook and Google deterrence ads. And these are actually, there's algorithms that can see if you're searching to buy sex online with children, and an ad will pop up that says, it looks like you're trying to buy sex online, this is a felony, if you need help, click here. We've run 4 million ads and 22,000 people have clicked through for help. We've educated 400 sex buyers in King County through the Stopping Sexual Exploitation Program, which is a 10-week intervention program that works with existing sex buyers to understand their motivation and attitudes about paying women and girls for sex and how to work to rehabilitate them. We've engaged bystanders through the Engaging Men to End Violence program, which facilitates discussions around healthy relationships, violence prevention, and social and personal responsibility. So if you see something, you say something, and you do something. We've trained 1,600 hotel staff in King County to recognize traffickers and trafficking victims and how to report it and refer victims to critical services. We've educated 2,500 high school students in King County to teach them about healthy relationships and the signs and dangers of traffickers and trafficking. And we've developed a statewide reporting protocol to collect and organize data on child sex trafficking victims so we can track them and understand the magnitude of this problem. So, what would a $40,000 grant from Pitch Your Peers do? It could do any one of these things, and it could do all of these things. And it was recommended that I come up with something specific that the money would go towards, because I know the coalition model is kind of hard to digest and understand. And to think some money goes here and some money goes there, and we all want to be able to look at something and think I did that and see success and know that we affected change. So I struggle with this a bit because I believe in the system in its entirety and its ability to work most efficiently across all these organizations to meet the greatest needs. So I tried to think of something tangible. But then I thought, what could be more tangible than a whole child? We use this term a lot in our school district when we talk about our students, the whole child. The number one mission is defined by our superintendent as supporting the whole child. It's not just one thing, it's everything. It's not just one child, it's 500. Disrupt the sellers, stop the buyers and rehabilitate them, educate teens, inform citizens, engage bystanders, provide immediate critical services, support recovery, and restore youth, the whole child.
It was so, I don't know, painful to watch my body disintegrate into the money that he makes. Me as a person, I just slowly started to go away.